Netflix. Oh, Netflix, 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 Netflix. I swear if you guys keep making movies for kids that are just this good, you're gonna coax me into having kids way before I'm ready to, just so that I can show them really interesting movies like this one. Because I do not know about the rest of you, but I'm gonna need at least like maybe 8 more years before I even think about having the conversation of children, okay? So everybody just slow it down. Just slow down. And in the meantime, cue the music. What's up, everybody? How's it going? How's everyone doing? Welcome back. So the movie for today is called Over the Moon, and if I were to tell you my overall thoughts about the movie, the title of the film pretty much sums it up, because that's how I feel. And one of the reasons why I am over the moon about this is because it is very similar to The Incredibles in that it takes a very, very harsh subject matter and kind of puts it in this nice little wrapping paper with a neat little bow on top and makes it digestible for everybody, including kids, which is kind of what the movie's geared towards. Now, does that mean that this movie is as good as The Incredibles? No, I wouldn't go quite that far, but I would say that it is darn close. Because this movie was so expertly written that I kind of want to track down a copy of the actual, like, principal photography script, because it's probably awesome. But anyway, the main plot of the film is it revolves around this young girl named Fei who loses her mother at a very, very young age. And lo and behold, a few years later, she grows up a little bit, and her dad kind of, sort of, maybe starts talking to another woman. And of course, naturally, that's kind of a hard concept for a child to grasp. So as a coping mechanism to that, and, you know, coping with loss and all these other things, she decides to build a rocket to go to the frickin' moon because of a fairy tale that her mother told her when she was little. Like honestly, could you think of anything more heartfelt than that? Like, I'm dead on the inside, and that's gotta be the most adorable thing I've heard all year. Like, that's, wonderful. I will say, the film is not quite perfect. There were some things that I wasn't a huge fan of necessarily. And one of the things that wasn't awesome was that some of the voices were a little bit over the top, boisterously, dare I say, cartoony, even though that's the wrong term. And it was mostly in the performance of the dialogue, not necessarily the dialogue itself, although it could have used a couple little touch-ups in a couple different places, but not much. And I felt like they could have had a little bit more emphasis on the dad, but I'm not going to dock at any points because I think this movie knew the story that it was trying to tell. Another thing that, again, this is not a bad thing, but it's kind of a fantastical movie, so there's a lot of random little MacGuffins to, like, move the plot forward that are just completely made up and just come out of nowhere. But at the same time, this is a movie about childlike wonderment, and childlike wonderment involves a lot of imagination, like if you have an imaginary friend when you're a kid and, you know, stuff like that. So again, not docking any points, just something I noticed. Aside from that, though, I could not be a bigger fan of this movie. Like, this movie's great. I will say it's expertly written. Not proficiently, not very well written. It is expertly written. This movie has traits of foreshadowing, there's symbolism, metaphors in the dialogue, while meanwhile there's metaphors in the actions while other dialogue is happening. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, this movie isn't a musical specifically, but there's at least 5 or 6 songs throughout the film. And again, those songs also expertly written. Or maybe, you know, I take that back. They're not expertly written, but they are extremely well written. And although the songs aren't really like poppy and catchy, they're very, very well written, and the progression of the songs, it made sense with the lyrics that they used. It was really good. Albeit, I'll admit, I'm actually not a big fan of movies that have a bunch of songs in them, because to me, music is more of a performance thing, like that you do in a live setting. So I'm more akin to watching a musical if it's, say, like a stage show. But again, not docking the movie any points just for my, you know, personal biases. But anyway, back to the writing and how awesome it is. Sure, they didn't focus on the dad really all that much, but the dad, what he represents, was also very well written, because the dad, essentially, if you watch the film, he kind of represents the idea of moving on or moving forward, because he's lived a life, so he understands that, you know, things happen that are really unfortunate, and sometimes you just you gotta keep living, you know? And Fei-Fei's mom kind of represents her childhood and this childlike wonderment we all had where everything was new and exciting, you know? And another giant stroke of genius that I don't know if a lot of people are actually gonna pick up on this, but there's a part where 2 characters are having some dialogue, and it's in the middle of somebody changing a light bulb, and to me, that is a brilliant metaphor for moving on with your emotions, because you're always gonna feel things, because the electricity is gonna always be on, you know? But sometimes a light bulb goes out and you have to change it, because you need light bulbs to see the world. Like, could you think of oh man. This movie's awesome. And another thing that I love about this movie is that it takes the fairy tale and it gives it a lot of reverence with the way that Faye treats it. But the movie also roots itself in science, and that's how she's like, you know, getting this plan, so she tries to build a rocket ship, you know what I mean? So it's like these two things kind of came together, but they didn't discriminate from one another, and that was great. Even though that's not, you know, what real life is like, but that's the point of movies. It's an imaginative experience, and it's something that you can see outside of the real world. So, you know, again, this movie's awesome. And the movie's extremely colorful as well, and it's also very, very clear that this movie draws influence from a bunch of other different movies. This movie is like a combination of Up, just based on the intro alone, mixed with like Inside Out, mixed with Interstellar, mixed in with The Incredibles, like I said, and a little bit of Big Hero 6 in there, and it's also kind of like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when it comes to meeting your heroes, and it's also, because of the girl power, it's kind of like Mulan, and by that I mean the animated version, not the crappy remake that they just made. And the last and best thing about this movie is that it had the confidence to tackle such a sad subject the way that it did. And I think, personally, I think we need way more movies like that for kids to watch. Because in my opinion, if all we're gonna do is coddle our kids and give them second, third, and fourth place trophies and act like everything's perfect, then they're gonna be devastated when they get older. And more movies like this also means that when kids encounter sad situations when they grow up, they'll actually have an idea of maybe how to deal with it, because if they don't know how to deal with it, then, you know, they end up being depressed all the time like I am. That's not to say that this movie will cure anybody's depression, but it could be a way to help cope with something. You never know. But all that being said, overall, for a score out of 10, I don't think I can give it a definitive score because I'm very, very emotionally driven by it. So I think for a score out of 10, I think I'm gonna give it anywhere between an 8.4 to like a 9.1, somewhere in there. This is a very, very well-written movie. It's digestible for everybody, kids and adults included. So I think it's safe to say I highly recommend it. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Have you guys seen this movie? Have you even heard of it? Are you interested in it after watching this? Hop in the comments. Let me know what's up. Other than that, if you like this review, give me a like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, do all that other YouTube-y type of stuff. And I will catch you guys next time.